welcome back to another show. Today I'm going to be talking about 3 Bunuel films, all from the Nothing is Sacred box set, which came from Radiance. It's a lovely box set, as you can see. Lovely box. You get all 3 films on the thingy, of course. Time in the Desert, Exterminating Angel, and Viridiana, as well as a nice booklet, which I'll show you here. Oops. Lots of nice images and lots of stuff. I've not read the booklet yet, I've just finished the film, so. Now, Bunuel is one of my favourite directors, so actually talking about him is harder than some other directors who are not my favourites. Because I think there's certain directors, I found this talking about Bresson was very hard as well, because you hold him in such high esteem. Same with Malik is like, are you being too kind on them, or are you being uninteresting because you're kind of slightly in awe of some of the films? So it becomes this thing of your favourite directors might be the harder ones to do videos on, which is what I find is I seem to avoid my top favourite directors all the time. Kubrick's another one where I've done some of his films on videos, but not all of them. It's a kind of slow process where you're kind of Ozu as well. It's just this sense of certain directors that I find hard to talk about. I think they're amazing, but because they're in your top level directors, you find them more difficult to discuss. So we'll see how it goes. You know, just one of those things where we'll see where it goes, really. So I'll start off with Simon of the Desert, which is Simon of the Desert, which is the shortest of the bunch. This is 45 minutes. Now, there is a controversy about, was this actually made to be part of an anthology, or was it made individually? There's different accounts, but because it's only 45 minutes long, it does feel like it should be part of an anthology. But I'm also quite glad it's on its own, because it just works on its own. It doesn't need other films around it. It makes it very difficult, very uncommercial for a 45-minute film. But some films need to be 45 minutes long, and other films need to be, much longer. Each film has its own length, its own natural length. And what I find is, if a film is not its natural length, the way nowadays films are either too long for their natural story, or too short, and you can feel it in the way the films are put out, because sometimes you just feel like you're stretching this way too much just to reach the 90 minutes, or to reach 2 hours when it should be 90 minutes. There's that thing with a lot of films where it's like there's not much discipline, and there's other films it's like you can feel them squeezed now and then when there's just too much story for that time, the time limit I've got, so a lot of things don't have the proper balance. But this one, it should be 45 minutes. Now, the whole idea of it is, it's a look at religion in terms of what people who are believers of religion, the variations of that, variations of the kind of insanity of belief, like what they put themselves through, and what they, and how they kind of think of themselves. Because one thing Bunuel is good at is looking at people and beliefs, and how a lot of times a status symbol rather than actual belief. Because it is, most religious beliefs are based on things that you cannot see. It's a matter of faith. And so they're easily disproven or ridiculed. But to people who actually believe them, doing that is a sin. It's horrific. You should not do it. But for anyone who's outside the tribe, it's like, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. This is obviously patently stupid. You can look at that for any religion, and anyone who's in a different religion will look at the religions of the people they don't agree with, saying, that's obviously stupid. Which is the funniest thing if you're not in any of the tribes. It's like, what are they talking about? So this film looks at the kind of the absurdity of religion and the practices of the people who actually follow it. So we have Simon in the desert, who is basically, they bring him very basic food and the roughest was awful food, but he's sitting in the desert meditating, not saying a word, and it's almost like he's like a vessel to God, and by his sacrifice, he's bringing on the sins of all the others onto himself. The way that they imagine Christ would, because he was on the cross, it's that kind of thing. As this person's died for all our sins, and as the of course, people being people, and eventually he was on a pillar that was quite small. So no, they build a much bigger pillar, which means he has to go much higher, which means it's going to be colder and windier for him to do his thing. So it's going to be less comfortable for him, which probably suits his weird kind of mental state for doing this. But it also means the people who follow him can be more pious, and the people who follow him look upon those farmers who rummage around near where Simon does his meditations as like scum and who are awful, and he should not be ever dealt with as human beings. No, they're not part of the club, the religious club that's going to get into heaven. And of course, they're very, very happy for Simon to pay for their sins by doing this thing. In the film, as you watch Simon do this stuff, you look at him going, what is your problem? Why are you doing this to yourself? This is insane. But the film doesn't need to say this is insane for you to notice this is nuts. That there's obviously some weird psychological thing in the guy's mind that's making him do this. A sense of impurity himself, I don't know, but there's something there that's not quite right, that's pushing him forward to want to do this thing for himself. And it's hilarious without having tons of jokes. It's just funny because by just focusing on this setup, it just shows you how absurd it is. But also, you kind of admire Simon's perseverance for, this is a simple task amongst a world that obviously has gone quite mad around him. So it's obviously, yes, he's saying to do it for pure reasons, but he's also hiding from the world. And he's found a perfect way to do it for, suffering for other people's sins. And telling himself he's an unbeliever, so he has to suffer through this thing. But he's also avoiding engaging in the world. And you see all these other religious people who are looking at him as if to say, thank God it's you and not me. And a lot of them are very flawed, and and every so often something odd happens that looks like a miracle. Because it's been well, there's a sense of humour to the whole thing. And it's one of the things that's hard to talk about. The ending's very difficult to talk about because it is strange and weird, and there's also the devil comes in the shape of a woman to try and tempt him. And at the end, it shows how absurd this whole thing is by jumping to the future, which is weird, and showing that the world has completely ignored everything that Simon has been working for. And that the devil holds sway in music and everything else, and nobody cares. It's just like, you did this, and this kind of thing about religion is like, the piousness of it is, we're doing this for you, and it's like, nobody wants it. Very few people want it. Only certain types of mindsets want this. And it's a really wonderful film. It's both serious, but also has a sense of humour about how silly people can be, and how stupid people can be, and how strange the whole thing is, and how religion warps you in very strange ways. But it's an imperfect setup for very imperfect people who'd, if it wasn't religion, they'd find something else to be imperfect and weird about. So things Bunuel always just called someone who's blasphemous and things like that, but it's just actually looking at human nature more than religion's just a institution created by human beings, and so it's an important one in the 20th century. So he's making films about that, about the imperfect way human beings act. But a lot of time it's like, oh, he hates the Catholic Church, and it's like, well, it's just a great representation of the insanity of human beings. So that's Simon of the Desert. So now we're going to go to Viridiana. Now, all three of these films star the same actress, and whose name I have. Of course, you know the name until you realise you're doing a video, then you forget it instantly. So it's Sylvia Pinal. It's that thing is like I literally came on the video knowing her name, and since now you're talking, it was just gone completely. So Viridiana, she plays the lead character, and this one, again, it's about religion. She plays a very pious nun she's about to become a nun. She's been studying to be a nun for years, and she's about to commit to the life when her uncle asks her to visit. Her uncle, who has been like financing her studies, but he's never seen her. He just let her go and do her thing. Like, her parents have died, and it's his responsibility, but he doesn't seem to have cared that much, and he has never really made much of an effort to keep in touch with her. And so she goes to visit him out of duty more than out of any kind of interest. But unfortunately, she looks just like his dead wife, and he's infatuated with her because it's a Bunuel film, and of course people are infatuations that make no sense outside of the crazy internal logic of a human mind, which, as we all know, can be plenty crazy. I mean, anyone watching this video, I'm sure you know some of the crazy stuff goes through your head on a daily basis. I know my mind is insane. So he's this fixation on this image of his dead wife, and she's the kind of embodiment of all he desires. But also, he's got a housekeeper who obviously he's been having an affair with over the years. This film has this attitude of human corruption goes on, and people just get on with it. It's just like, it's not like even like a big deal of, oh no, how could this happen? It's just like, at one point he says to his housekeeper, he says to her, I need help, and she starts unbuttoning, she's not that kind of help. But it's obvious from the way she does it, it's like, this has happened plenty of times before. And she's just, this is the way you live in life. But Viridiana is not used to this life. She is pious, she is, I'm going to help people whether they like it or not. So when the uncle does all these machinations to keep her, all of which fail, which ends up him committing suicide, her interactions with him have told her she's not as pure as she thinks she is, that she cannot become a nun. But she can still stick to what she thinks of her duties, which is to help the poor, to help the sick. So to do that, she will bring because she's now got a large house, which she shares with the illegitimate son of the uncle. The uncle has hanged himself in a very humorous, well, not in a humorous way, but the way that Bunuel does it, he's much more like, life goes on for everyone else. This is like, the way they talk about him after he's gone, it's like, that was stupid, he got his money, what's up with him? So it's got this sense of humour. It's like people have dramas in their head, but to the outside world it's like, huh? What is up here? And Viridiana's doing all this stuff with the helping the poor, bringing these people into this hut and nearby the big house where she feeds them, and everyone else just thinks she's mad. It's like, well, all these people you're helping are all the people who've been thrown out of society because they're lazy and distrustful, and you're not going to change them. You can help them a little bit to bring themselves back up to something, but a lot of them are in this position because they could not survive in the world because they were untrustworthy. The people deemed them untrustworthy. But she is a much purer belief in the world, and as her uncle says earlier on, he goes, I was like you when I was younger, but slowly but surely everything just fell away over time, which more or less tells her that there's disappointments in what people actually are not as nice as you think. But she ignores that. And then slowly but surely over time, the film is about her realising that she's not that different from her uncle. She's trapped within a human system of very flawed people. And kindness does not create further kindness. It pretty much creates selfishness by other people if you've been kind to the wrong person. So, and if you've been kind to the right people, you're going to ignore the people in need. But if you're kind to the people in need, or too kind to them, they'll take advantage of you. So at one point, you have to leave the house, and all of the vagabonds enter the house and have a party. And it's the Last Supper. There's 12 of them, and the central figure as well. So they have a lot of fun with all the kind of religious connotations and via mockery of the Last Supper, mocking Viridiana's ideals and what she thinks of the world and what she holds dear. And by the end of the film, she had just kind of realised, what's the point? What's the point? I tried my best, but people are people, and people are very flawed, including me. And we just have to survive life and be as nice as possible. Like, she hates the son of her uncle to start because he seems cynical and, lustful. And by the end of it, she's like, he's just another person. He's just not. It's not that big a deal. The things I hate about him weren't really that hateful. He's just a person who's getting through life like everyone else in his own way. And it just is this slow come down from someone who thinks they're above it all and has all the answers to realising they don't know much at all. It's sort of aging, when you're younger, you think you have iron cast. This is what works. Why don't they do this? And then when you get older, it's like, yeah, but people are really flawed, and all the logical things tend to get run down by people's reactions and flawed reactions and disasters and just human nature, and it never quite works out. This is a very funny film about that. But I would say it's the least of the three films for me. Other people adore it. I like it. I think it's a really good film. And rewatched it, I liked it a lot more than before. But there was a lot of other films in Bunuel's oeuvre that I liked a lot more than Viridiana. But I was actually pleased to rewatch and like it a lot more than I did the first time round. But now we're going to get to my favourite Bunuel film, The Exterminating Angel. This is just a masterpiece. This is a film, when it first came out, it was it just was one of those instant, this is great. But then it was hard to find, and even the quality of this visually is good, but there's actually a thing in the soundtrack is that there's a kind of weird buzz at the bottom. If you use speakers, you don't hear it, but if you have it in TV, you hear slight sound. You learn to ignore it, but it's kind of a flawed master because it was made years ago and it wasn't kept up the way it probably should have been, and it was a lower budget film, but it's beautiful. When it first came out, for me to try and buy to see, I had to buy this terrible VHS level copy for £18 on eBay, and I still felt I was worth the money just to see the film because it was so hard to get hold of at that point. And then eventually you got an official DVD, and now officially you're getting a Blu-ray, and you kind of wish there was a 4K because the black and white photography is gorgeous, but we're happy to have what we get. We're happy to have this, because this is a very nice copy. So Exterminating Angel that's the hardest one to talk about because it is one of my favourite films. It's about this dinner party in Spain. It was shot in Mexico, I think, but I think it's set in Spain. But all these people go to a dinner party and they're having a dinner party, but at a certain point, all of the people who are basically servants, they all just leave, and they're saying, "Why are you leaving?" I just had the urge to leave. They can't explain it. They just have the urge to leave, so they all leave, apart from one guy, and everyone else in the party, all the kind of rich, are in the dining room, and then they move into the area just around that, and where it's just a kind of area just to sit and chat for a little bit, and no one leaves. People that urge to leave, but they can't leave. And what follows is an hour and a bit of them trying to leave but not being able to, but not in a kind of obvious kind of, oh, we have to find an escape route. It's much more, these people are polite on the surface, but they're animals below. And they don't want to admit to anything. They don't want to admit to discomfort of something's keeping them in, something in their head. No matter how close they get to the edge of this room to leave, to move out, they cannot. There's something going on in their heads. But there's something like supernatural that's made all the servants leave. So no one can help them. So they're trapped in this area where they have to devolve into things that make them uncomfortable. Is the best way to put it. So it's a film we're looking at what lies below the kind of polite society. Now, apparently this thing about people who go to dinner parties and take forever to leave was not unusual at the time. Apparently this was something that was a problem without the supernatural element. Just like people would hang around and hang about, so the host eventually would get fed up with them and like, why haven't they left yet? So apparently this was something that Bunuel would observe just by being a person in the society. But then he took it further, one step further into supernatural, where they can't leave, and it's like, what happens if they can't leave and they don't have any food, they don't have any water? So how do they survive? And basically, and some of them are ill. It's what happens if someone dies? Well, you have to put someone over the body and try to ignore the smell. Well, how do you go to the bathroom? Well, one of them puts, when everyone's sleeping, one of them puts a big vase in a cupboard, and everyone just goes in that cupboard, and no one speaks about it, but everyone knows what's going on because everyone had to do it. And no one can talk about the smell. How do they get water? Well, they find a way to get through one of the pipes so they can have water that can turn on and off, so they can actually have some drinks of water after. They figure that out once they're down to the last drop, and then they realise what they can do. One of the guys realises there's some of the board you can soften up and eat as well. And people are like, that's disgusting. Of course, they all do it. And it's like, what happens to people when they're forced to do things they would normally find despicable and disgusting? And they slowly start to turn on each other. It's like a polite version of Lord of the Flies, where it's not just boys, it's actually men and women both. And you see both genders, they're kind of the nasty side coming out on both sides, and how some people are perverts and some people are pious and deluded, and it's a whole range of humanity. And you have a host who starts getting the blame for everything because he invited them, so it's his fault that all this thing happened. And it just becomes a story about these people trying to figure out how to survive in something they can't even talk about very much, and just try and not kill each other. And slowly but surely some people realise they'd rather die than just keep going. And other people just keep going, but they become more bitter and strange. And it becomes this look at humanity. And this is where the piousness actually hides. Like, a lot of people are very polite about someone in the party, but once they're stuck with them, behind their back, they're turning about them like, why couldn't he have died? What use as a musician after all? You know, there's all sorts of like quite a bit of anti-Semitism going on. That's just kind of, it's just normal for that time. But Bunuel knows it's wrong. Bunuel just points it out. It's like, yeah, these people think they're smart, but they're really not that smart. They're pretty bitter. And just nasty in ways they will never admit themselves. This thing of the facade of civilization, they've built up all these tales of what they are to themselves. They've told themselves what they are based on their personality, but they've tried to make themselves so important. And it's like, this film just breaks it down to show them that people can be pretty cruel, can be petty, and they will not learn a thing. Because at the end of it, when they finally figure out how to get out of the room, they go back to their normal lives and don't learn a thing until they go to a church as a service for the people who died, and the whole thing starts again. And as you go outside, you realise there's something crazy going on in the society. Like riots are starting, and it's something bigger and weirder. And so that's this whole film is about, the kind of just the craziness, which we just forced down, and not look at, and how it's quietly exploding. So even though there's a supernatural element, this is also could be read as the neuroses of people who are lying to themselves and who can't face the world anymore. There's lots of reading you can have for it. There's lots of, it's one of those great ideas where they don't over-explain anything, and you can read lots of things into the situation, and you can interpret in your own way. But for me, it really reads into the kind of the craziness of humanity, and just the pretensions, and how a lot of the interactions surface level, and how even when I end up in danger, they still don't read into anything that much. It's still like a very surface level read into what's going on in their lives. They don't want to get too deep into anything. They don't want to grasp anything too closely in case it disturbs them even more. So it's a beautiful film. I urge you to see it. It's so good, and it's so funny, and it's all these films are quite short. Like the Viridiana and Exterminating Angel are 90 minutes or something like that. They're fairly short, but they pack a lot in. There's so many ideas in these films that put a lot of films to shame that are like double the length and have like one idea, and this one has like 90 minutes and there's tons of ideas, but they don't overdo any of them. They just they expect you to be intelligent enough to understand a lot of it without having to explain it in an obvious way. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you look at this box set and see these films, because they are beautiful. They are just wonderful. So that's me for now. Right, bye.